To Addis News Hour. With the news, I'm Shifar Raulako, and many thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says the government decision is not based on emotions, rather on lasting benefits and solutions. The Prime Minister expressed firm stance of his government that the decision to remain on guard in the positions Ethiopian joint forces have held after liberating the two regions is to avoid falling into the trap of the terrorist group. Daniel Kasaun has more on that.
Minister Abiy Ahmed expressed firm stances of his government that the decision to remain on guard in the positions the joint Ethiopian forces have held after liberating the two regions is to avoid falling from the trap of the terrorist group. The Premier, in his statement, indicated it is not as a short-sighted order from mere feelings, but made with thorough deliberations for sustainable benefits of the country. He highlighted the government of Ethiopia is duty-bound and responsible for avoiding loopholes that don't permit give way to the terrorist forces to live longer and attain their wishes. Abiy stated Ethiopians are not only defending and winning offensive from enemy forces, but also they are withstanding different forms of battles in different contexts. He further underscored wiser decisions are being made to reverse the various kinds of encounters that are meant to weaken and disintegrate the country. The government has already made his stance loud and clear that it has successfully concluded the first goal of the campaign of multinational unity carried out to maintain the survival of Ethiopia. The main objective of the campaign was to clear the invading terrorist TPLF from the Amhara and Afar regions and prevent the ground from posing threat to the country again. The government can also enter the Tigray region at any time to fulfill its responsibilities of maintaining the sovereignty and integrity of the country. The Premier has expressed optimism that the decisions and techniques crafted by the government are long-lasting and beneficial to the overall development of the country.
Now, the government of Ethiopia disclosed that the joint forces of Ethiopian army are ordered to stay where they are. And to tell us more on this issue, we're joined live on the phone by Dr. Jonas Adaye, who is the Associate Professor of Peace Studies at the Addis Ababa University. Dr. Jonas, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, first of all, how did you find the decision of the government in ordering its forces to remain where they are? Is it just for the sake of political and diplomatic gain, or does it bring any significant gains?
Thank you. I thought it is a reasoned decision-making. As it was stated by the Prime Minister himself, it's not an emotional or a quick-minded, but rather, to my understanding, deeply weighed, the right and the left seen. So for three reasons, I say it is a very well-reasoned decision. Number one, I think it is based on experience from the past, when you had the Ethiopian army for 20 years in Tigray, when the army wanted to leave and to be moved into other parts of Ethiopia, from the west or to the south. By then, children, women, all definitely fell in the feet of the soldiers, begged them not to move, only to end up being massacred there. And secondly, when again that law enforcement started, and when they started to enter into the society, they were stabbed from the back. And so that really gave the government excellent experience and not to repeat what happened. And number two, yes, it has also diplomatic values, simply because I'm sure we all have heard time and again that some Western as well as some other colleagues and development partners were asking Ethiopian government not to enter into Tigray once if they had already defeated them from Afar, from Amhara region. And I think it has that diplomatic concordance with international community as well. And most important for me, the third one is it also sort of resonates with what most analysts and the strategists analyzed before, say 2, 3, 4 months ago, if the government clears those two regions, particularly Afar and Amhara, government should not enter into Tigray. They should be entrenched around so that the people of Tigray could mobilize, should stand up to asking the question, where are our children? You promised to enter into Addis and take up the government regime and remove Abiy and others, but where are they? So because Tigray people really are wise and they may just ask questions, they can never always be cheated and ignored. And they would also say that this could demonstrate to entire population as well, because I told you we're not going to have any negotiation because there is no one. The war is over. But now people realize that the war is not over. Ethiopian government had upper hand and they came back from those old areas. So I think that would expose entirely the lie that has been time and again told by TPLF, that it's no more trustworthy, but rather rebels running after their own benefits, that, caring an iota of a point for their own people. So that would put them on a spotlight, and that international as well as internal pressure would make them come back to negotiating, back to the request made from Ethiopian government from the very outset, that is bringing criminals to justice and, of course, starting building the nation from scratch.
And Dr. Jonas, the other assumption is that the people of Tigray will get time to assess the destructive moves and to come to their senses in order to strongly oppose the terrorist TPLF. What is your take on that?
I think, as I alluded a moment ago to this very point, that, war sometimes teaches people wisdom as well. You can cheat, you can trick, people once, but maybe twice, but not forever. So they were told that the leaders themselves told the entire people they have sieged Addis. They have taken control of all Afar and Amhara. Now, as if they were just getting up from the very bad dream and daydreaming, that all what's been said was wrong. When people realize that, I think it is human behavior, that they would ask, they would come back to their sense, as you said, they will back again be conscious, and where are your promises? And where are our children? So what you said, you are not delivering. Therefore, leave us alone. We have to work with Ethiopian government, with Ethiopian people. You made us enemies with Eritrea, with Afar, with Amhara, with federal government. We can't be an isolated, we can't forever remain an island, which is almost inhuman. And all those atrocities, those crimes under the name of Tigray, our name. So enough could be the answer, because people will naturally come back to their sense, and we have real trust in people of Tigray as well. They're wise people. We should never ever be persuaded by propaganda time and again disseminated through social media and digital TPLF members. So I am confident they will come back to their sense and definitely tell the truth, as I told in Addis here in demonstrations, that Tigray people have lived thousands of years before TPLF was created, and they'll continue to live without TPLF, and they can live as such wise people. And I'm confident they'll come back to their Ethiopian brothers and sisters and be in peace with Amhara, with Afar, with the rest of Ethiopia, and with Eritrea and the rest of the world. And I'm sure Ethiopia will have, and Tigray people will really have, together with Ethiopian people, as always, bright future, God willing, inshallah.
Indeed, Dr. Jonas Adai, thank you so much for your ideas, and have a blessed night.
Thank you.
So having the diaspora,
Ethiopia has been imaged differently from the reality.
Out of U.S. policy change towards...
The real reasons they wanted to maintain the blockade is that they wanted to
and also some pressure is on the Ethiopian government, and they are just taking the domestic issue to the international arenas like the UN and...
What's the picture you have about the Ethiopian diaspora? Nowadays it seems that their beauty is blossoming.
The suspension of Ethiopia from AGOA isn't likely to have a serious impact. Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. Now, scholars caution that the planned all-inclusive national dialogue should be conducted with utmost care, as this is a window of opportunity to heal the scars in the complex Ethiopian politics. Talking to ETV English here today, Mohammed Jamal and Kafialo Tasama, both political science experts from the Madawa Labo University, pointed out that the process entails patience that some other nations like South Africa and Rwanda also had to go through. And Binyam Alamayo sat down with the experts and compiled the following story.
Transition should be considered a recurrent Ethiopian phenomenon which unfortunately has rarely occurred peacefully, as was the 1974 revolution toppling Emperor Haile Selassie and the 1991 overthrow of the Derg military government. The consequences of the 2018 transition claimed many lives, even if the transfer of power itself was generally peaceful. Despite being a constitutional state, Ethiopia entertains polarized views on a host of crucial issues, including the Constitution of 1995 itself. Ethiopians also lack consensus on the national flag and the common history, among others.
As to me, Ethiopia have been through a lot. We have been experiencing a lot of crises, natural and human-made, so many crises we have been through. We have never had a time to discuss, to sit and to discuss and reach for a national consensus.
But while treating these thorny issues, all actors must take precautions as the issues bring polarized sects of the society face to face.
We have to focus on common issues. For instance, even the Chinese, let alone the past kings, they do have a good agreement on Mao. Mao did a lot of crises, but he also contributed something for his country. So we should have to learn that. Every person can make a mistake, but let's focus on the good part, on the positive side of it. So we should have to be very careful. No need to antagonize or go to extremism. We should have to be more balanced. We should have to focus on dialogue, consensus, then let's agree. The past is past already. So enough is enough. Let's focus on what will be our future. Let's build our future together.
Any government that fails to recognize the precedence of politics over military action risks facing protracted armed resistance and insurrection. In this regard, the government has taken the initiative to start dialogue on contentious issues and create a common understanding.
All the stakeholders, without any kind of partiality, they have to come together and settle their matters across as a board. So Ethiopians, what all they do, they must bring their issue to the table and put a genuine dialogue.
The scholars recommended that Ethiopia learns from the experiences of other nations like Rwanda and South Africa, both of whom had to undergo a tedious healing process.
We can take, for example, the example of South Africa. In the post-apartheid period, South Africa has the experience of the Truth and the National Reconciliation Commission. And the commission has first listed down and made a long list of all the necessary representative of the society. All issues come to the table. All the stakeholders actively participated and bring their truth. So their truth should be seen and heard. That chance was well done. And then after the truth, the reconciliation comes after everybody speaks, brings their justice. The historical injustice in the past have been brought to the fore stage of the dialogue table, and the dialogue table finally ended up in a very good national consensus that South Africa is becoming the Africa's only state in the G20.
This is a very nice opportunity. We can learn a lot from Rwanda. We can learn so much from Republic of South Africa. So we do have a lot of much problem than them, but we have never had a time to sit together and to discuss it. So this is a good opportunity for Ethiopia.
Now at its initiation stage, the inclusive national dialogue is expected to help Ethiopia strengthen its attempts to resolve challenges to peace and security.
The United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR, admits the fact that TPLF fighters recently crossed from Sudan to Ethiopia carrying its IDs has served as alarm bells to apply stricter scrutiny on refugees. Talking to ETV, UNHCR's Ethiopia representative Mamadou Diane further disclosed that refugee status is incompatible with active participation in armed conflict, adding that the incident was disturbing. Jerusalem Bezia reports.
One of the manifestations of the TPLF's barbaric rule was the massacre meted out against the Amhara in Maikadra a week after the attack on the northern command of the Ethiopian army back in November last year. Those who spearheaded the genocidal act were local youths known as Samri, aided by the local administration and the so-called Special Force. They went door-to-door killing those they identified as having Amhara and Walqite identities. However, those TPLF fighters crossed to the Sudan only to come back carrying IDs issued by the UN refugee agency, UNHCR. The number of registered Ethiopian refugees in Sudan has been decreasing, but it said it doesn't know their whereabouts. Talking to ETV, Mamadou Diane Balde said that refugee status is incompatible with active participation in armed conflict, but that the incident was alarming enough to serve as a painful lesson.
We are alarmed by that, and we are concerned by these actions, and we have taken as much as we can within our possibilities. Yes, we have a control mechanism. We work with the government of Sudan. I was recently with my counterpart in Sudan. We have conversations, we advise them, we provide them with support so that refugees are not engaged into this. But you know, Sudan is also a very large country. It's like Ethiopia. So you cannot say you can control everyone at the same time. So I would say to you that our colleagues, our partners are doing their best, but the people who are engaging into hostilities are absolutely not refugees. They were refugees, but from the time they do that, they are no longer refugees.
As one of the UN agencies, the UNHCR's Ethiopia office has to say regarding the gruesome situation.
Why you hesitate to condemn these atrocities of TPLF or the TPLF group on media?
What I want to say to you is that there have been a lot of violations of right. Some you know, some you might not know, but we have quite a number of channels through which individuals concerned make their point, families, individuals, as well as ourselves. But I can say to you that for the time being, as the Minister of Justice has indicated, what we have, as well as the National Human Rights Commission, is that we have a very solid report, and that report needs to continue. And I think there is a very clear vision from the government, and we are supportive of that vision as part of the UN country team. We have our colleagues of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We work with them very closely, and we do believe that impartial as well as neutral our work will be carried forward.
Given the double standard and complicity exhibited by the West and some of the multilateral organizations like the UN during the third-month-long war, many Ethiopians have been harboring doubts about the credibility of these institutions. The representative, however, affirmed that UN agencies operate in Ethiopia applying the principle of neutrality, adding that as a founding member of the League of Nations, Ethiopia deserves respect.
Now, there are few misunderstandings. One is that is the UN here delivering for the people of Ethiopia? Yes, we are delivering. As we speak, we have over 700 persons who are working here. Is the UN a part of the United Nations? Yes, that's also true. There are other member states in the UN system, as is Ethiopia. So that's something which is really the member state dimensions of the UN that we cannot control. But as UN civil servant, we are here, we have stayed, we have delivered, and this is not the first time we are doing it. We have been doing that for decades. Ethiopia is a founding member of the United Nations. Ethiopia knows the United Nations perhaps better than any other country or as any other country.
The UN has also been under fire for silence following months of looting and massacre in Afar and Amhara by the TPLF. The UNHCR has toured some of the liberated areas in those states and provided service for the displaced, says the representative.
I have been here only for 3 months, but I have visited the Afar region where with the resident coordinator, humanitarian coordinator, we provided support. That was just 10 days ago. I have visited 2 months ago the Amhara region through Gondar, through Debark, where we have been providing support to the internally displaced persons, where we are relocating some of the Eritrean refugees. We have been working in the Oromia region. As we speak now, we are supporting returns and as well as reintegration. I would say to you that working for the UN, and Ethiopia is a founding member of the United Nations. Working for the UN for us is a privilege, and working in an impartial way, in a neutral way, making sure that we are really focusing on the people. This is what we do here.
Mamadou Deambalde said the UNHCR will press ahead with its support for IDPs and Eritrean refugees located all over the war-hit northern Ethiopia.
So Ethiopia is currently under attack, and as an African, when you see a country like Ethiopia under attack, then you should join in to support, because this is history simply repeating itself. What do I mean? Have you ever wondered why most African flags use the red, yellow, and green colors? Well, it was actually the Ethiopian flag that inspired the flags of many African countries like Ghana, Guinea, Cameroon, Mali, Senegal, Togo, Comoros, Burkina Faso, Seychelles, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome and Principe, Congo, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Mauritania, Benin. Personally, as an African history enthusiast, I always refer to Ethiopia as the African whistleblower, because it was Ethiopians defeating Italians that was one of the main triggers of World War II. It was also Ethiopia's resistance against foreign occupation that inspired a lot of African countries to fight for their own independence. Even the Pan-African color scheme developed by Marcus Garvey was inspired by the Ethiopian zeal.
Ethiopia is really standing on its own in terms of progress. They attack Ethiopia because they want to attack the Belt and Road Initiative. They don't want the Belt and Road Initiative to flourish, because if it does, it means Africa will change. It will change into a completely new paradigm.
A lot of African countries still draw strength, and have always drawn strength from Ethiopia. And so when you see Ethiopia under attack, then know that the entire African continent is under attack.
Now, moving on, Pakistani ambassador to Ethiopia, Shozab Abbas, underscores that his country has played a significant role to support Ethiopia at critical times. In an exclusive interview with ETV, the ambassador indicated that any intervention by some Western powers on Ethiopia is not necessary. Kasaun Chane has sat down with the ambassador and filed the following report.
As a long-time friend of Ethiopia, I'm sure Pakistan has made its own observations regarding undue foreign pressure mounting in Ethiopia. So here, how should the Global South cooperate to forestall the dangers of this Western intervention, according to you?
In the current situation, I believe that Pakistan and the people of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, has all sympathies towards your country, and we are behind you. In a very recent episodes, either it is in the United Nations Security Council or in the United Nations Human Rights Commission, Pakistan has supported the cause of Ethiopia and conveyed to international community that any outside intervention in a sovereign state would not be acceptable under international law. So the international law dictates the international order, how the countries should build their relationship. So I believe we is a law-abiding nations. We all trust in international order. We all want to strengthen that order. And I believe that the international community would heed and adhere to the principles of international relations and avoid any kind of intervention in this sovereign country. So with this fundamental principle, Pakistan would remain with the people of Ethiopia, and we, inshallah, extend all possible support which is possible within the diplomatic and regional context.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Moving on to my second question. As part of this Western-led effort to choke Ethiopia under pressure, some embassies here have been issuing false alarms, making it look like Addis Ababa is falling and that chaos will soon ensue. What is your position in this regard?
I think we should not discuss this question in isolation, only Addis Ababa. Yes, if we are talking about Addis Ababa was perfectly all right during the entire period of this internal strife. I would say that when people evaluate the security standards of any place, they determine not only within a small specific region, but they take it in totality, that how the entire country is actually looking like. Is it really in chaos or is it not? So I believe that when the TPLF people were advancing towards Addis Ababa, a natural fear came into the minds of many people, especially the foreigners, because foreigners have a very little information about the local peoples. So the fear is a natural reaction. So we should not be offended by their reaction. It is their prerogative. It is their national right to protect their self as well as their properties. But after having this recognition that the security is the fundamental right, we should not disseminate any wrong information to outside world or even to the local world.
And finally, how have the Ethio-Pakistan relations been going at the moment?
And we still have a very strong partnership in all domains, particularly in economic field. Our businesses are flourishing between the two countries, and people are eager to come to Ethiopia to start investment in Ethiopia in agriculture sector, in textile industry, in pharmaceutical, and even in social fields like education and health. But the deficiency is connectivity between the two countries. So I would request that the Ethiopian airline should immediately resume regular flights between Addis Ababa and Islamabad or Karachi, so that the people from the two countries should move freely, and they may have more opportunity to understand each other, visit their different places, and see that how the two countries are actually flourishing the businesses. So I think once that connectivity question would be resolved effectively, the businesses will definitely not only double but tripled, because there is a lot of potential. Pakistan is also an agricultural country, but we are also advancing very fast in light engineering technologies. Also, the information technology is also booming in Pakistan. So I would say that if really the two countries may come closer to each other, they can benefit, and the trade potential is there, and it can increase many folds.
Now in business,